So I know people are standing, and I thought what I could do is answer the most common questions that I get asked, which is, are the insects real? Yes, they are. Is this their natural color? Yes, it is. I'm crazy, but obviously not crazy enough to paint all of those. Did I collect them myself? Sadly, no. That strikes me as a whole nother career, which perhaps I will embark upon at some point, but at this point, I have not. They come from specimen dealers, and often people are surprised to learn that such people exist, who shops with specimen dealers. Collectors, most collectors want two of a species, a male and a female, perhaps another color variation. University collections, museum collections, they work with specimen dealers. Clearly, I need a lot more than two of a species. And so I've been doing this for nearly 15 years. And over that time, I've really whittled it down to working with one insect dealer who is a Belgian, living in France, married to an Indonesian woman, so he has these wonderful connections all over the world. And what happens is there are certain insects that work well for these exhibitions. And by the way, these are reused time and again. Some of these have been going for 15 years. And we put our not so great specimens high up or low down and keep the prime ones at eye level. So at the conclusion of this exhibition, they will go down, be pinned onto foam core boards into storage boxes. But in working with Alain, is his name, he knows that I have a liking of cicadas and grasshoppers. I wanted to work with insects that people maybe have not thought of as being beautiful before. So I stay away from butterflies. I do have one moth, an atlas moth there, but I just have a small number. Honestly, they're not up to the wear and tear that an exhibition entails. The other thing I get asked is, you teach textile design. How did you start working with insects? And I came to insects through a very legit textile route. In the mid-'80s, I was doing research in northern Thailand in the area known as the Golden Triangle, and I stumbled upon a garment. It's a shawl from the Karen tribe, and on the fringe of the shawl were strung the hard outside wings of beetles, the elytra. They had strung these metallic green beetle wings, and so it was incredibly beautiful. Imagine beads or sequins, just like that. But they also made a sound because they're that hard, and so there was a tinkling sound. And to me it was a revelation in two respects. First of all, the ingenuity of using something that was at hand, and then second of all, these beautiful insects. Somehow I had never thought of insects as being beautiful. You know, I grew up in Canada, and not dissimilar from this climate, most things are black, brown, bite, sting. Why would I? So I don't know, I must have been sick the day we went to the Natural History Museum. I never thought of that. And through further research, I've discovered other groups who use insects as embellishment, whether it's on a garment or a headdress, and this became fascinating to me. I studied textile design as both an undergrad and graduate student, and pattern is my thing. I just love pattern. I love the visual dynamism of it, and as Craig said, I really believe that it functions as a kind of language. Certainly when it's worn on the body, pattern can, by pattern you can tell someone's ethnic identity, sometimes their marital status, sometimes their position within a community, many things. In our culture, we rely on t-shirts. But through my research in Thailand, I saw a very sophisticated use of pattern. And pattern upon the wall, this is a relatively large pattern, and pattern on the wall, the bigger it is, usually the grander the space. Smaller patterns we reserve for bedrooms. So these are things that I've given a lot of thought to. So new for this exhibition is these trophy heads. And in this past summer, I was doing research in Europe on Victorian era museums and specifically modes of presentation. And I was really struck by the Natural History Museum in Paris and Dublin. I swear to God, it doesn't look like they just changed their display since 1890. And you walked in and there were just skeleton after skeleton. Taxidermy skin is what they're actually called, skins. And it was horrifying. And I thought about, how did people view that in the Victorian era when the animals were very plentiful? And nowadays, we know that large mammals are rapidly disappearing. And in fact, in those locales, they call these museums the dead zoo. So I think that the gold heads, trophy heads, they strike me as sort of monument-like, memorial-like, and you'll notice that around them are Victorian-era die cuts, and sometimes it says, "Remember me." So I do think that there is a memorial-type aspect to this, and of course, I take a lot of inspiration from the Victorian era, a time of great collecting, great clutter, and this obsession with death, certainly. So I think that that's appropriate here. I'd like to talk briefly about the insects. I've talked about larger mammals, becoming scarcer. But I think insects really deserve the recognition for the important role they play in our environment. We need insects to survive. And we're all hearing about the hive collapse, devastating, millions and millions of honeybees dying. And we need them to pollinate blossoms, which in turn produce fruits. I read a statistic that 70% of the food we consume is the result of insect pollination. So without insects, we are going to be eating grains and meat, and this is going to be a very different world. And honestly, I can't understand why more people aren't upset about this. And I can guarantee you that insects in this area are endangered because of suburban sprawl. And we tend to take up the case of larger wildlife, particularly birds, I notice. But insects really deserve a second look. So I hope that if you get nothing else from this exhibition, you'll think about insects in a different way, and perhaps next time you see something, you'll scoop it up with the newspaper and gracefully show it the door, as opposed to stomping or bringing out the rain. And then I'll talk about these kind of narrative scenes here. I've long been enchanted with the narrative. My mother was a wonderful storyteller. And to me, I set up scenes that I guess I would call provocative. And I think it's up to you to decide what the story is. And to me, that's more fun than me telling you this is what the story is. But if you do want to read a story, I did actually write a novel that was published in 2013. It's for middle school, young adult readers. It's called In Search of Goliath's Hercules, and it really grew out of my work. It's about a boy who discovers he has the ability to speak to insects, and he goes on a quest to find the mysterious Goliath's Hercules. So, of course, I encourage you to ask for the book at your local library. We do have some copies here. And I did bring some artist books that are related to the novel, which they're right there. So I love storytelling, and that's really the fun of these. I guess I should say that anything that gets broken, we save and try and repair, and as I indicated, put it high or low. And sometimes there comes a day when an insect needs to be retired. And so I make what I call hybrid creatures. And if you've looked in some of these bell jars or the houses, you'll see a creature, a womanly creature, I guess. I call them the cicada ladies. They have cicada heads and wax body and grasshopper arms. And here they are wearing very fancy headdresses. So this is another route that my work has taken. So yes, I'd be happy to answer questions now.
Where are the cicadas from?
The cicadas are from Malaysia. Most of these species are Southeast Asian species, with the exception of those bright pink grasshoppers are from Madagascar. The purple grasshoppers in the corner are from French Guiana. Yes?
Did you plan this out before you came here so that you knew where every
Yes.
grasshopper, cicada was? And did you do it in minutia, or do you have something?
So every exhibition is different. They're all site specific. So if you go to see my work at another show, and I'm going to be showing at the Smithsonian at the Renwick Gallery when it reopens in November, and I'll have a gallery space. So if you're in DC, do come and see. You'll see something different. You don't have to go, oh, I saw that already. Yeah, I have a floor plan that Craig sent me, and I have a picture of each insect to scale on my computer. So it's all planned ahead of time. I have to know how many to bring of each species. And so it was planned. And then to do this, some of you saw on the TV spot last Tuesday, we set up a thread grid, and for every square or diamond, there was a paper template piece. For every circle, there was a circular piece. And then we take all that down. Ta-da, I've shared my secret. I didn't perfectly eyeball all of them. Any other questions? Yes?
Can you tell us about the honeys? I think they're honeys.
Yes. So in the cases, and here we have insect products, of course, beeswax and honey. And the honey is, a lot of times I'm playing on people's fear of insects. You know, when people who look outside the gallery will think, oh, what's happening with that wallpaper? And then there's that walking up and sense of discovery where it looks like, yeah, this could be in someone's very fancy parlor perhaps. And then I literally see people take a step back. And there's this tension that's created by something we think we know, yet something we fear. You know, nobody really wants insects in their house, let's face it. So the one soft spot we have for insects is, of course, bees. And so I wanted to refer to some of those positive associations, which are the honey, and the beeswax, also a traditional medium of sculptors. Well, I know it's hard to stand for this long, so if you have more questions, please come up and chat with me. Thank you so much for coming.